Hello, everybody. I'm Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet, about to be joined by Ken Wiebe from Sportsnet. Together, we are Kenny and Renny, and this is the Kenny and Renny post-game show after, just another Jets victory. Getting to be old hat by now. Won 8 of their last 9 games. Absolutely on fire, blazing a trail that's led them to first place in the Western Conference. I don't want to say who would have saw that coming. I mean, maybe you say that at the beginning of the year. I think we've known for a really long time that they were good. I think we've known since before Christmas they were capable of challenging and pushing to get to this stage. But boy, oh boy, it wasn't that long ago. The Dallas Stars had opened up a really, really wide lead against the Winnipeg Jets, and they closed that gap in an absolute hurry. They are on a tear right now, and after that 2-1 victory, I know how a lot of people will take that a different way. Full confession, I was on a plane for a good chunk of this game, coming back from the Hockey Night in Canada game that I hosted in Colorado yesterday between the Ottawa Senators and the Colorado Avalanche. So we're going to make sure that we get some in-depth analysis, not just from Ken, but we're going to be bringing in the hammer on this show to help break down what we've seen here. I saw parts of the game, chunks of the game, and I'll say this: a lot of people will come in and they'll talk about a Arizona Coyotes team that we know is not a very good team. We know they've been struggling as of late, and so I think some people will think, a 2-1 victory for the people who are glass half empty kind of people. They may look at that game and not be happy with it. I've got absolutely no problem with that game. I think the Jets went out. That last game against the Pittsburgh Penguins had maybe their best game of the year. Definitely one of their best games of the year. And what made it so good is they did everything that they were trying to do in that game. And I think there's a tendency to come off of that high a little bit. And I think you saw a little bit of that tonight. And here's the other part of this. And I know probably I'm the worst, maybe one of the worst in the city when it comes to this, the kind of the demanding nature of, looking at a Jets game and being like, yeah, they could have got better here. They could have done this better. They could have done that better. I get it. It's an 82 season grind. I understand that they're not all going to be their best games. My problem has always been with the Jets not really approaching it the right way. I thought they approached this okay. This is a night where clearly the Jets are a better team than the Arizona Coyotes, but it's a close game. They allowed them to be close, but this to me is similar to the Buffalo game, in which I just think that the Jets managed it right. What happened in Buffalo was a close game, and what they did is they took their experience and their knowledge and their work ethic and said, rather than like go crazy and jump out of ourselves to try and beat this team and expend a whole bunch of energy, and if we keep doing that game after game after game all year, we're going to be exhausted come playoff time. And that game, they just stayed steady for a good chunk of the game and waited for the Buffalo Sabres to make a mistake. And they made that mistake. Well, similar to what happened here tonight as well. They go out. Got to give Nate Schmidt a ton of credit for turning that puck over and starting it down the other way. And the goal that is scored by Cole Perfetti, passing it to Mark Scheifele and over to Blake Wheeler. This is one of those high skill plays, great vision by these players. If you take a look at the pass by Mark Scheifele, it is just absolutely elite the way that he finds that passing lane in that moment. There's a really great camera angle of it from the lower corner that just shows kind of how he turned, got his hands in tight to his body and moved it over. Super high skill play. But if you take a look at the Coyotes defenders, they are absolutely lost on that play. They don't know what's happening. And this is a younger team. This is a somewhat inexperienced team. This is a team that's clearly not one of the better teams in the NHL, and they're going to have those moments. And I thought what the Jets did tonight was, rather than going out and busting through walls to try and win this game, they just sat into their system for the most part, relied on that system, and just waited. And they waited for that mistake. Once they got that mistake, it's in the back of the net. It's 2-1. And then from there, the Jets just having the confidence to shut things down and having a goaltender who's capable of shutting it down as well. I don't mind that game one bit. I think these are the kind of games that you need to win down the stretch to end up being first in the Western Conference. should we suggest there's a potential of them challenging the Boston Bruins down the stretch? You never know. They keep playing like this. Boy, it feels like they're never going to lose the way that they're heading out right now. You got to win games like that, but I contend, and I'll go back to it, it is far better to see them win these games where they just kind of sit in their structure and don't put too much energy out there, but are never playing from behind, right? Just like in Buffalo, they are leading. Okay, the game gets tied up, but they're never ever submitting the lead in that game and in this game, managing it well. I'll take this 100 times out of 100 rather than the old school way where they would just not show up, have a team go up 3-0 on them, and then score their way back into a game and win it. That's all about the bad habits. That's all about the bad attitude. This, to me, is how you survive those games in the grind of the NHL season. And we are clearly smack dab in the middle of the grind of the NHL season. That's my take on it. Let's get the take of the guy who's down at the rink today, the man with the best music in the business. Here comes Kenny. Ken, my friend, great to see you. I'm hoping that your travel back to Winnipeg was a little more stable than your travel from Buffalo to Pittsburgh, which is getting to be a legendary trip, the way that I can hear people keep referring to it on Twitter over and over. Good to see you. Tell me what it was like being down at the rink for that one.
Yeah, Sean, I would say that your take is pretty accurate. I would say it was not, wasn't as sound a game as we saw on Friday, but how do you expect it to be? The Jets are on a stretch of 8 of 9 on the road. They came home for a quick laundry special, and I thought they were mostly tight. They had a couple of breakdowns. Obviously, one of them led it to their goal, but I mean, outside of that one, that was kind of a breakdown, and I asked Rick Bowness about it afterward, and he's like, that's not how we defend. I think that was one of those, Sean, where, it's one of those games where the Jets had gone like over half a period and close to a full period without even giving up a shot. So when Nick Schmaltz found Clayton Keller in the high slot, there was just a little bit of over pursuit, combination of the communication breakdown, and Morgan Barron kind of went with Jacob Chychrun rather than maybe pivoting on Keller. The other forward wasn't able to pick him up, and neither was the defenseman. So ended up being just an incredible show of patience by Keller. Adam Lowry did his best street hockey special, laid out, tried to knock it down, but wasn't able to do so. And Connor Hellebuyck just kind of overcommitted a little bit, and it was a beautiful goal. But I mean, outside of that, I mean, it was not a lot of dangerous. Yeah, I mean, Nick Schmaltz on the doorstep. Yes, there were a couple of the breakdowns. There were a couple biggies for sure. Connor Hellebuyck had to be sharp, but for the most part, the Jets, I would say, were steady in this one. I don't think they were spectacular, but those are games that can be difficult to play. Coyotes are playing pretty freely, not a lot of pressure on them. The Jets did enough offensively, and I think that their adherence to their structure in a game that, quite frankly, the Coyotes would be more than happy to go air it out and run and gun and everything else. I thought they deserved full marks for getting the job done. Well, like I said, that I don't think that was all that close to their template, but grinded out special. They're just coming off, the flu. Their big guns came up big again, and Karel Vejmelka also had was a major factor in this being a one-goal game. Vejmelka has ridiculous stats against the Jets. He always seems to be a guy who makes life incredibly difficult on them, but a couple of pretty plays by the Jets find the back of the net, and outside of that, I would say just a fairly tidy effort overall.
Ken, you're looking sharp tonight. I'll be honest. I'm wearing pajama pants right now.
Hey, I
I was
can't blame you.
rolling off the plane. It was a couple of low sleep nights, so maybe my biorhythms will be a little bit off, a little bit tired heading in here. But boy, I'd feel a lot sharper if I looked as sharp as you did. And I got the stuff. I got it upstairs. I actually just unpacked a bunch of it. I had some of the Frankie specials on the road. Two different suits that I had going on, one for the game between the Pittsburgh Penguins and the Jets, and then yesterday in Colorado. I want to touch on that game too, because I wanted to kind of touch on the idea of what a game looks like that doesn't involve the Winnipeg Jets. I want to get to that at some point. But anyways, I wore plenty of I represented Frankie well, I believe, over the weekend on Hockey Night in Canada twice, a double dose of Hockey Night in Canada. But boy, oh boy, I would say tonight you're Frankie's favorite because you're looking like $1 million. And that's what he does. Frankie and the boys down at Vittorio Rossi. You want to look good, head on down to Corden Avenue. Go see them at Vittorio Rossi. Tell them Kenny and Renny sent you. Ask for Frank by name, and he will take care of you as good as it gets. Thank you so much to them for sponsoring the Kenny and Renny podcast and show, I guess. The Kenny and Renny show. There we go. Let's jump into it already. Let's get to your Lamplighter on the night.
Yeah, I mean, it's the Blake Wheeler GW is the Lamplighter for sure. It's one of those classics where, as a coach, it's one of those, oh my goodness, not an extra pass, good job. It's honestly, it's one of the classics. And I don't see any of it as overpassing. I saw a lot of great puck movement. Scheifele getting the puck to Perfetti. Perfetti knows that he runs out of real estate, Sean. I mean, he's not going to score on a sharp angle backhand. I love the patience. I just talked about Clayton Keller's patience walking down the slot. Man, Cole Perfetti, he doesn't need to rush that into the corner. He knows he can get it back to Mark Scheifele, and Mark Scheifele knows that all of the Coyotes are over pursuing and that Blake Wheeler is going to be wide open. To me, that was just really a couple of subtle examples of brilliance. Blake Wheeler kind of joked about it after the game. He basically was hoping that one of them would score so he could make a line change. He was pretty tired. By the time the puck got to his stick, it was one of those as a player. Sometimes you hate to have those. It sounds ridiculous, but if you have an open net like that and you miss, you're like, oh my God, why didn't you just shoot it? But Blake Wheeler doing a nice job of getting his 11th of the season. And that line, Sean, we talked about it dating back to the Detroit game. They've really started to find their rhythm, and that's a dangerous proposition for any opponent because right now it's a pick your poison situation in terms of what the opposition is going to be doing in terms of their line matching, right? I mean, Dubois and Connor and Ehlers are absolutely flying. That Jets, the 1A and 1Bs are both really rolling right now. Adam Lowry's line continues to check incredibly well and doing an excellent job of limiting the opponent's offense. Yes, I understand they were on the goal against today, but I think we kind of undersold it on Friday, the job that Lowry did against Sidney Crosby's line the other day, Sean. That line was just absolutely exceptional. At a time when the game was kind of, I wouldn't say it was going south for the Jets, Adam Lowry came up with a couple of just massive body checks in this game today that really kind of got their line going. And I really think that his contribution has been really massive throughout the course of the season. We've talked about it plenty, but to me, the fact that the Jets' top two lines, we talk about this so often, Sean, when the Jets have both of those lines rolling in the top six, man, it makes them an absolutely dangerous team. And like I mentioned, the two great passes and the finish by Wheeler into the open net on a night where there weren't a lot of open nets because of Vejmelka's ability to take up so much of it, given his athletic ability. That's my choice for the Lamplighter, sponsored by the great folks at Trans Canada Brewing Company.
Well, yeah, let's throw it up here. If you're interested in your own frosty, delicious 8-pack of Trans-Canada Brewing Company, Lamplighter Amber Ale, all you have to do is share with us your Lamplighter, your goal of the game, and you will be instantly in that moment entered to win your own frosty, delicious 8-pack. If you can't wait for us to hand one out to you, though, you could just head on down to Trans-Canada Brewing Company. Join them in their tap room at 1290 Kenniston. They've got their store where they've got such a selection of beers. They've got great food there. We rave about their pizza, and rightfully so. Those of you who will be coming to the Kenny and Renny live taping on the 21st, you'll be able to check out all different kinds of it there. That, to me, me, that's the one thing, the value of that show and going live to that show. We said, Ken, it's $20. You get your first beer, which is, that's that right there. And then you add the pizza on top of that. And the fact that you get to do a pizza kind of tasting, like it's a pizza flight, basically, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely great. We can't wait to see people there. It's one of my favorite places to hang out is down there. And I should announce that the winner of the Frosty Delicious 8-pack of Lamplighter from our last show is Philly Danger, who I saw making comments in the show earlier on. Hopefully he's still around. Philly Danger, you know the drill. It's going to take this off here.
Sorry, but
direct message me at SN Sean Reynolds. Philly, I'll need your full name. Philly Danger, if that's your real name, that's a
tremendous,
darn cool name. That's a super cool name. Like, got to be a spy or something like that with a job like that. You can't be like an accountant or something like that, or like, nothing against a painter, but like, if you're painting houses and your name is Philly Danger, you got into the wrong line of work, my friend. Full name and an email where I can get a hold of you, and I will send you a voucher for your very own Frosty Delicious 8-pack of Lamplighter Amber Ale. Make sure you head on down and try their pizza when you go down there to pick it up. Before we get rolling into our Johnston Group Got You Covered play of the game, let's bring in our guest on the night. It's been too long. Ken, I love your music. I love my music. There's no misses when it comes to Tristan Rivers, and here's an example of there not being a miss. I love playing Hammer's work. It's time to bring in the Hammer.
Bring in the Hammer! Dropping 2 bombs, dodging shot grenades! Move over, kiss someone else, there's no something! Gonna make Renny shout, and the show will overtime! Bring down the Hammer!
Gentlemen.
I love that song. I just love
gotta make a guy smile. Gotta make a guy smile.
No, halfway through, I'm wiping it away. It's so emotional, It's just such a special.
Hey, stop mocking me! Stop mocking me!
You do that too, or what?
only on Friday.
Ken had a moment on the last show. He had a moment after his first appearance on Hockey Night in Canada. Jeff, it's been far too long.
Oh, sorry about that. I was not mocking you. I didn't know that.
Oh, it's all good.
Yeah, but you were awesome, Kenny. It was a great moment for all of us. I think everyone had a tad bit emotional. It was awesome, man.
Thanks, I think so too. It was nice that, it was one of the things that was nice doing the show afterwards, was being able to kind of share that moment with the audience, because I think that the audience wanted to be able to share that moment, and that's great. Our chat room has always been there for us since we started, so to be there in that moment and support you, Ken, that was absolutely great.
And thanks for the messages too, folks. Whoever reached out, there were plenty, and it was fantastic stuff.
Oh, now the shot's at me. I never reached out to Kenny. Now he's shooting back. Now it's shooting back. I want to do it in person.
Exactly, buddy. That was not a shot at all.
Like number 2, 3 would be like text message, or a note.
Love it, love it, love it, love it.
Hammy, hey, why don't you share your Lamplighter on the game? For you, was it the? I guess it's pretty clearly the Wheeler goal.
Yeah, of course. I mean, that was. That was a goal where I felt. I mean, clearly they needed that one. It was going. I mean, anyone who watched the first period thought the Jets were going to run away with it, even though it ended 0-0. The only momentum Arizona had in that first period was from the 4-minute power play, and got that one great opportunity, which Helva came up big for. But that goal came at the perfect time because you guys were talking about it before. I caught the IC boys a little bit before the show, and sloppy game, right? Absolutely sloppy game in this one, is in long stretches. I didn't mind the game. I'm with you, Sean. I really enjoyed, how they played in a lot of respects. They obviously, yeah. They obviously. It's crazy how much I listen to this show, but it's. But then I saw a team that wasn't getting frustrated, and that goal was huge for that path of frustration, right? We've seen this team, when they're down a few goals, fall apart. We've also seen this team be very easily pushed off, their track, and we've seen it with this team in particular with Vejmelka. I mean, I don't know what this guy has on the Winnipeg Jets, but it took, a play that in Wheeler's goal that took an extra couple passes to get an open net, because you weren't going to beat him if you didn't have an open net, it seemed, for a long stretch there. And on top of that, I mean, I thought it was interesting too, with that goal as the Lamplighter. I thought it was interesting that I was wondering what Rick Bonus's take was going to be on it, because I felt like I felt like in that first period, it was all drives to the net. It was exactly the way the Jets had played. And then when they started to get a little bit frustrated, I don't think they showed a lot of signs, like visible signs of frustration, but maybe that element of overpassing or trying to do too much because it didn't feel like it was going to be easy against this guy. That goal kind of gave them that breath of fresh air. I thought Connor Hellebuyck was massive down the stretch and even throughout parts of the game, but certainly the Lamplighter for that one, just in the style in which they scored and what it meant to the overall momentum shift in that game, I felt.
Yeah. Hey, let's hop right into it. I'm going to offer up your got you covered play of the game, as sponsored by the Johnston Group. Hammy, what did you think was the play that kind of may have saved it for the Jets? And that's why I love this play, especially in like a 2-1 game, right? Because there's always those moments. That for me, I'm thinking, well, I won't even get into mine. What did you see? Who saved it tonight?
I think Connor Hellebuyck saved the game. What did he end with? 21 shots against? I guess, and so I felt like, he wasn't overly busy, but I thought that he bailed this team out. And not like, I know people roll their eyes sometimes at, key saves, like all saves aren't equal, but all saves aren't equal. And I felt like there were not several, but at least one or two occasions while the Jets were trying to get that lead after the Clayton Keller nice goal, where if Hellebuyck doesn't come up big with a pad save or a stop, particularly early in the third, comes up with a big save and then gets a little help from the post. I would argue, did it touch him? Did you see it touch him before it hit the post? So yeah, I thought that
Sorry, it hit his skate or what?
I think it hit the side of his body almost. Like it was a weird kind of fell back. That's what I saw too, but I didn't bother to do a replay.
No, he's just.
But I thought that early in the third there, that was an integral part, and I thought that saved the Jets and ultimately stuck to their game the rest of the way and ended up getting that game-winning goal. So does that constitute a game saver, or what's the official title?
Oh, it's the
Got you covered.
Got you covered, yeah, from the OGs.
Yeah.
From the OGs, yeah, got you covered. I thought like many times this season, Connor Hellebuyck had his team covered and bailed him out on those key spots.
No doubt. Kenny?
Yeah, I was going to say more generic. We're going to get to Pierre-Luc Dubois right after this. It was more of a Pierre-Luc Dubois appreciation game, but I was going to give the got you covered to the Jets penalty kill during the double minor to Stenlund. It was one of those games where the Coyotes had nothing going, and all of a sudden they had a 4-minute power play after the double minor for high sticking when Stenlund caught Clayton Keller in the mouth. I know it was early, but to me that was an important part of the game because it's power plays like that. All of a sudden, if the Coyotes score twice on a 4-minute minor or a double minor, can kind of put the team on its heels. So that's more of an appreciation for what the Jets penalty kill has done during this stretch. They've just been absolutely dominant, quite frankly, as a top 5 unit. And to me, I thought that they're one of the underrated stories in the game. Where Hellebuyck was great, as Jeff had already mentioned here. I just filed my piece for sportsnet.ca. It's very Pierre-Luc Dubois centric, and we'll dive into that in a minute. But two great options for the We've Got You Covered, sponsored by the OGs, the good folks at the Johnston Group.
So I'm going to go off the board on this one because it's a defensive play that creates the offense. For me, it's the Nate Schmidt defensive play where he chisels the puck loose from the defender who tries to curl back and create some space, thinking that, the defender is just going to stop there and give him space. Not at all. Nate Schmidt follows him and chips the puck off his stick, and that's what starts that odd man rush for the Winnipeg Jets and the panic that sets in this Coyotes team, and they never recover from that moment. I know that there was a lot of passes, and we're all going to be talking about Cole Perfetti to Mark Scheifele and Wheels putting it into the back of the net. That's what everyone is going to remember from this. But everything, it's instant fire drill, and everyone's losing their minds on the Coyotes as they respond to that poke check. So it's a defensive play. It's a great defensive play that actually turned into a great offensive play. That play is made by Nate Schmidt and his aggressiveness. And again, we come back to this. It's the Rick Bowness system, right? They're never sitting back. There's no safe places on the ice. If you're going to button hook and curl back, the defender's not just going to sit there and say, okay, I did my job, I sent him in the other direction. No, he's going to follow you and get that puck off your stick. He does it in that moment, and the Winnipeg Jets win 2-1 because of that, although I think they would have found a way to do it at another point in the game anyway. But I just thought, like, for a defensive play, that's not easy to do. That's a tricky thing. That's a play that you never see happen in beer league hockey. You probably don't ever see it happen in junior A hockey, and you don't see it happen in senior A hockey, right? Like, if you're defending and a guy button hooks on you, you leave him alone. You sent him in the other direction. So for him to stick with that play and go after the guy as he's, heading in the other direction, turn that puck over, that's my Johnston Group got you covered moment of the game. And just to give a shout out to our Kenny and Renny OGs, you won't find two businesses with the same challenges, but you will find 30,000 businesses with Chambers Plan employee benefits, proudly administered by our friends at Johnston Group. Chambers Plan is Canada's #1 plan for employee benefits because it evolves with the way you work and live. The plan is run as a not-for-profit designed specifically to support small businesses, and its unique pooling strategy keeps rates stable so you won't have any surprises at your next renewal. Chambers Plan now comes with professional consulting on key financial, legal, and HR issues, and Teladoc telemedicine services are included with every health option. See how Chambers Plan can benefit your business by visiting chamberplan.ca. Hammy, I wanted your take on what we're seeing from Cole Perfetti the last little while. I'll just quickly launch it by saying I don't think we've seen this level from him at the beginning of this year, at any point last year before he was injured. It seems to me, I don't know what happened on his time off, whether he just got to kind of soak in being in the NHL or kind of put the first half of his rookie season behind him. But Cole Perfetti, to me, looks like the Cole Perfetti I think everyone had hoped he could potentially be after logging a lot of time in the NHL, and he's already arrived. And the idea of how he can play off that line, I mean, if I'm a Jets fan, I'm salivating at what I'm seeing in the way that he's fitting in with two players who really are magic with the puck.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't think you were alluding to this, but he was good before he got hurt, right? I mean, we'd already seen flashes from him this season. He was strong before that injury, an unfortunate injury late in the game there. I think it was Boston game, but I think what we're seeing here is that we've been talking about the incredibly high hockey IQ that this young man has, right, and what he brings to the game, and it kind of irks me a little bit when a player can be so smart with the puck, right? Like if you're intelligent with the puck, people go, well, he can't really skate. You know what I mean? Like he's not fast enough. Like he needs to be Kyle Connor, and he needs to be the best player. So he's a good skater too, and we've seen that he's become. Look, he had a great year in a lot of ways last year with the opportunities he was given through COVID, and his would have otherwise not been afforded. We saw some early steps there. We saw him come back this year. I think. Like Josh Morrissey, like Mark Scheifele, like Pierre-Luc Dubois, go down the list, he is benefiting majorly from some one-on-one coaching in this league. Whether it's Scott Arneal, who helped him early on about not pivoting, back, to his back to the player on the boards and putting himself in those vulnerable situations. He's a quick learner. So he already has this foundation hockey IQ. So when you saw him come onto the scene, you were amazed in preseason. You were amazed in parts of his game where he was able to feather passes and find open space for players, right? That was always going to be a work in progress. He's a young player. He was always going to need time to get better. He had a great first season. Obviously, the injury, throws him back a bit. And I think you got to give him a lot of credit for bouncing back from some pretty intense injuries and not a lot of time in the offseason to get right. And so I think what we're seeing here now is a guy who was – you were never going to put him on a top 6 line, a place where he belongs, obviously, and just expect him to adjust very quickly, right? Because he's kind of used to being the guy who controls a line. And if you look at a line with Blake Wheeler and Mark Scheifele on it, both those guys love having the puck. So I think what you're seeing here is Cole Perfetti being smart enough to now play with these guys. We know the chemistry between Wheeler and Scheifele has been there forever. This is a guy who I think has now found his chemistry, his rhythm with these two players. We all know he works closely with Mark Scheifele at practice and does all those things, so he's getting on the same page with him in that respect. And Blake Wheeler's an easy player to play with. I think that's why they put guys like Cole Perfetti on his line. And I think with three guys that have, variations of speed. I don't think, I think it works, that level of speed on that line, I think works for a guy like Cole Perfetti. And then there's the confidence, right? I think everyone is benefiting from the confidence that this team has. And when your team's confident, you're winning, it's fun to come to the rink every day. You're just going to keep growing on what you're doing. And Cole Perfetti's a fast learner. So I think the two big things here is obviously just the maturity and the more experience on the ice. But I think he's getting one-on-one instruction way more detailed than he had under Paul Maurice and their staff last year, and it's showing dividends this season.
Ken, what are you seeing?
Yeah, I mean, he's just been great the last while, and I mean, he's not a burner. I mean, that those are facts, but I mean, that doesn't matter. He gets from A to B successfully, and his ability to anticipate is much more important than a guy who skates as fast as he can but has no idea where the puck is going. So there's lots of those guys in the NHL that can skate fast but get nothing done in terms of their effectiveness. So Perfetti, another steady game. I thought he was solid. I mean, Jets spread out their ice time really well. That's another thing that was very important. They've been very busy. They're about to go out on the road for their longest road trip of the year, 5-gamer. Cole Perfetti, coming off the flu game, still had 15 shifts for 14:34. Only one shot attempt, but that doesn't bother me. I mean, some people saying, yeah, Perfetti passes a lot. You know why? Because he's an exceptional passer. He also has a really good shot and release. I mean, could I see him blossoming into a goal scorer the way that Mark Scheifele has? I think there are a lot of similarities with those two players, and not just because of the fact they enjoy studying the game and working at it. Cole's got a great release. We saw it in the American League, and we've seen it at times here as well. It's natural for him to defer to those other two guys on his line, especially Mark, who has, by the way, 26 goals this season. There will come a time when Cole Perfetti is I would say you can mark the receipts down right now. I think Cole Perfetti becomes a 30-goal scorer in the NHL. He has that ability to do it. He goes to the right spots. He knows where to be. And I think that he'll continue to grow. I mean, this is a young player who is playing an important top six role. And this is the other thing, folks. When it comes to Cole Perfetti's skating, I mean, this guy was shut down early last season because of shoulder and then back injuries, which that was crippling in terms of his training. Cole did a great job of getting ready, but under normal circumstances, this guy is probably adding, whatever number, 0.5 or half, whatever. His stride is getting better. He's getting stronger. He wasn't able to put in the same type of, he put in plenty of work in terms of his rehab, but in terms of getting stronger and power skating and all that, the guy was off the ice for an extended period of time. So next summer I expect a boost in terms of his skating, but I'm not worried about his skating at all because his word processor works at a faster rate than the majority of people on the ice. And for him to be able to do that at age 21 is exceptional. So to me, I think he's continuing to grow. Now, the thing, again, the same for all young players. Can you withstand the rigors of an 82-game schedule? And if the Jets want to get to where they want to go, with that being 4 rounds of the playoffs, that's another 2 months of hockey. So that's a big grind to sustain, but he doesn't have to carry the team. He's there to be an important piece of the puzzle. Even though he's in the top 6, I would put him in the complimentary contributor category because of his age. But he's doing more than just be a complimentary player. He's become a very important player. He's very motivated to continue to push through. And, missing some time in the long run will probably help him because there won't be as much tread on the tires. I mean, I understand it's only a 2-week stretch, but that can help a player down the stretch. And I think that Cole will continue to excel. There's going to be bumps in the road. There always are. It doesn't matter if you're 21 or 28 or 36. But that line has really, played better lately. And Cole's a big part of that. And so is Blake Wheeler, who, some folks were saying, 2 games back, he's not getting a lot accomplished offensively. Well, he's found his legs again and he's rolling. I mean, that line has got all 3 guys going. That was not a shot at Axel Jonsson-Fjällby at all. He is a guy who skates exceptionally fast, but he doesn't think the game at the same rate as Cole Perfetti. And if you that's an early wake up there. If that's what you thought.
Oh,
come on!
Holy,
come on!
Oh,
wow!
Whoa!
Okay,
that was not a shot whatsoever.
Oh, yeah.
Ken takes it from 10 kilometers an hour to 105, just like that. Holy smokes.
You know his trigger now. It's when people say he's hurting other people's feelings. That's when he gets. That's
Exactly.
when he starts throwing out.
I'm not
that's
here
when
to
he starts-
throw. Yeah,
when he
exactly.
starts hurting other people's feelings.
That's not my game.
That's when
That's
he'll,
not my
he'll
game.
People hurt
feelings.
people, man. That's
He'll
it.
hurt your feelings with a wake up if he suggests
Yeah.
that he's hurting
Yeah,
people's
be better.
You know
Be
the
better,
power-
cat.
you know
Be
the-
better,
you
cat in the
know the
hat.
power
Be
of
better.
your wake ups, right? Like
Be
you
better.
get that power. That's early.
It's an encouraging way to. I know you. I know you can do more. I know you
What's
can do
your
more.
heart rate right now, Sean? Mine's skyrocketing.
I'm a little shaky over here.
Yeah, just like
Consider
I'm just
yourself
like,
awake.
Oh
I
yeah,
love
no
this
doubt.
here.
Yeah, no, I'll just side with Kenny. Whatever he says.
Sean, I'm like you. I haven't had a whole lot of sleep the last 2 days with our
No
flight
doubt.
situation.
Yeah.
No doubt. I wanted to close out this Cole Perfetti conversation. I do think, Jeff, I know you'd said that, and he was playing some good hockey. I see something totally different in Cole Perfetti in the last number of games. I think he's elevated his game to a place that it's gone beyond where he was before he was injured. At that time of the year, he's at the stage right now. I'm going to say it, like, I don't think him catching Matt Beniers is out of the question at this stage. Like, with the way that this line is shaping up, the way that the Jets are playing, yeah, he's 10 points behind him right now. I don't think it's a crazy idea to think that he can get there, because what I see from him is a guy we know that he had that ability to make those passes. You knew at some point, and Ken, I think we said this right off the bat with this show, that putting him with Wheeler and Scheifele was a really smart thing to do, because he kind of sees the game the way those guys do. Like I've talked about it in the past. I know you don't want to go down that road too much, but the kind of snake charmer type of offense that Scheifele and Wheeler have been able to do for years, he's capable of doing that. What I see from him in the last little while is that it's really clicked for him. He's really figured that out to the point now that he's making a lot of those passes where he's just getting the puck and moving it right to the guy, really without barely looking. Like, he knows where they are on the ice without having to look and see where they are on the ice. It was Nick Ehlers who talked about this in one of the scrums, Ken, before they went out on the road the first time. He was asked when he saw one of his line mates, I think it was Kyle Connor, setting him up for a goal, and his response was, well, I never did see him. I just know that's where he goes, right? Well, Cole Perfetti, I think, is at that stage. I think tonight's goal is a perfect example of that. He knows now the tendencies of Mark Scheifele, and how Mark Scheifele likes to play off of a play, like he gets close to the action, but just off to the side of the action, a little parallel to the action is what Mark Scheifele likes to do, and that keeps him in the play, but out of the play enough that he has space to operate. And so if you're Cole Perfetti now, you don't need to look for him. You just know how Mark Scheifele operates, and you're like, okay, the action's over here. Well, that means Mark Scheifele is just going to have sloughed just a little bit off the action. He's going to be right over here. That's where I'm putting the puck. That's dangerous at this stage, to get those three players knowing where each other are and having the capabilities of playing off each other. That's dangerous. And Cole Perfetti is fully a part of that now. I had heard afterwards that the Mark Scheifele interview that I did after that game in Pittsburgh, it didn't run because there was audio issues. But holy smokes, Mark Scheifele raved about Cole Perfetti and what he's seen from him as of late. I think Cole Perfetti has taken it to another level. I think I'm feeling confident about my pick early in the season that he could end up winning the Rookie of the Year trophy. I don't think that race is over yet. I think a lot of people thought it was. And I know when we were down with all the Hockey Night in Canada boys, Ken, I had said something about that. And I think some of the guys I talked to were like, okay, slow it down, pump the brakes here. And it looks like that, right? You're trailing them by 10 points right now. So if you're coming into Winnipeg and you're having a look at this team, you're like, hey, listen, he's no Matty Beniers. And he's not right now. But I think he could heat up. I think he could go on a heater, and I think that we could get close to him catching him. And I'd said this in the last show, Ken. I think he'd need to outscore him by like 6 or 7 to 10 points if he was going to get that trophy. I forgot about the time that he's missed with injury, though. If he ends up close to him in the standings and he's played however many less games, that could be enough to put him over the top. We did that story on the potential for trophies in Winnipeg this upcoming season. I think Cole Perfetti is putting himself in as good a spot as any of the other candidates, be it, you know, the Jack Adams Trophy, the Norris Trophy, the Vezina Trophy. He's going to give himself a shot here, I think. Guys, before we do go on, Ken, I want you to give a shout out to your main man, Lou.
Yeah, folks who need your realty needs met. If you're looking to buy, looking to sell, just curious about what the market's like in your community or your neighborhood or someone else's, you can contact our main man, Lou Ferlin, at Royal LePage Dynamic Realty, 204-791-9971, or at the office, 204-989-5000. His email is lou@louferlin.ca. That's LOU@LOUFURLAN.ca, and his website is www.louferlin.ca. Lou Ferlin, great supporter of the Kenny and Renny show, and a great supporter of the community to go along with all-around great human being and top-notch realtor.
Great guy all around, for sure. Pierre-Luc Dubois, another goal on the night here, and just back to the blueprint. Jeff, I haven't really talked to you about this. I know I love talking hockey strategy with you. The way that the Jets are generating from the point this year, why is it working so well?
I think it's working so, like, just particularly from the point or general.
Well, just, I mean, so I'll say it like this: when the Jets get in trouble, when things aren't going well for them, you'll notice what they do is they stick one guy off on one side of the net, one guy on the other side of the net. They'll get the puck up top, and then they float in and time it so that they're taking the goalie's eyes away right at the right time. It's actually like it's a bit of a sophisticated system. A lot of teams don't do it. Usually you just park a guy in front of the net and leave him there. But the Jets, whether or not it's the fact that they've already outscored last year's team in scoring by defensemen, but just the fact that this is a team that now seems to try to find their offense first and foremost off of shots from the blue line, the way that first goal was scored tonight. What's your take on why the Jets are so good at it, why they have such a high percentage of scoring from so far away?
Look, I'm gonna sound a bit like a broken record here, because I feel like this man has been talked about since the moment he got onto the scene. Rick Bowness, when he got onto the scene, he announced the D were coming, and so I think, immediately made it a priority. Like, if you were to put up a list of things that you thought Rick Bowness had an issue with the team last year, I think it's pretty safe to say if it's not number one, it's in the top three of the lack of scoring, lack of offense from the blue line. And you know what I think is great is that you wonder what Paul Maurice thought. Did Paul Maurice think that that he had such gifted forwards that they could will their way, that they didn't need to be bothered by the defense, for lack of a better explanation, and that they would take care of it, and that the defense had to come? Like, I'd be fascinated just to find out exactly what Paul Maurice's systems were and exactly what these ones are, because I think there's a lot of things. There's activating the defense through the systems. There's like, you have to think that a lot of it has to do with almost energy, within a game, feeling part of it, because this doesn't answer the question about how the far away part. I think the defense are doing better jobs of getting pucks to the lane. I think the forwards are doing a better job of having a net front presence and understanding where they need to be. Like, I think this is part of the offensive structure for this team. Whereas I think a lot of it in the last year and previous years was built around the forwards. The other part of it, and I think this is more of a game flow thing, is that in a lot of ways, I think that giving the defense the license to jump up on the rush actually benefits the forwards in a lot of ways too, because I felt it was far too one-dimensional last year, where it was like the forwards were expected to forecheck and the defense were expected to hold the blue line. And when you're caught out of position and you kind of are in flux of what you need to do, like if you're a forward who needs to be the forechecker, this kind of takes the thinking out of the equation. If you allow the defense to just jump up into the play and play the way, or just jump up into the rush, like how many times do you see where a D-man is leading, the forecheck? Lots of times, certainly significantly more time than what we've seen in previous years. And that's when you activate your defense the way the Jets are doing, they're going to get points from their defense. And then I think it's the individual one-on-one coaching. Like, I don't think you can understate the importance that these players put to one-on-one coaching at this level in the league. And I think you're finding coaches who are identifying, strengths, weaknesses from the defense and encouraging them, obviously improving them, but encouraging them to jump up and be offensive. Like Josh Morrissey was told for years, essentially, like, sit back there and be a D-man. Now he's activating, he's got the confidence to do so. And so I just think you're generating more with the defense because you're asking more out of the defense. And the defense, obviously full credit to them. The defense are delivering. But I mean, it starts with Josh Morrissey just having an absolute banana season compared to previous years, but it has to be systems. It's systems related and it's game flow related. When the defense are being activated, given the opportunity to play up in the offensive zone, they're going to get in on the goals. We never saw that in previous years, and that's what they're doing a great job of right now.
I think you absolutely, hold on, Ken. I think you absolutely nailed something there, Jeff, in that, because what a lot of the players will talk about is the expectations of what they're supposed to be doing under Rick Bowness's system. And you nailed it, because people have a tendency to meet the expectations that people have of them, right? And so you're absolutely right. Rick Bowness came in with the expectation that his players were going to do more and score more. And I just think that totally shifts a mindset and puts you in a position where it's like, this is required. This is part of the job.
Well, he's not pulling the defense in and being like, hey guys, like, I want you guys to get more points. Like, this is gonna be, he's bringing the whole team in and going, our defense is taking some of that pressure off our forwards to score and lead the rush.
It's expected, and they're reaching expectations. Ken, what are you seeing in their ability to reach those expectations?
Yeah, I mean, today's game is just great passing. I mean, Morrissey to Ehlers right back for the 1T, blue paint special by Pierre-Luc Dubois, gets a stick on it. And, that's a power play marker with great puck movement. Two things there. I mean, Nikolai Ehlers, Sean, you were there. I mean, Rick Bowness, when I asked him about the power play on Friday and integrating Nikolai Ehlers, it wasn't a get it done or you're out, but he certainly made it clear that he wanted more from Ehlers.
Yes.
And Ehlers has since given plenty more. Not that he wasn't trying to give more before, but Jets are doing a better job of A, getting into the lanes where they can shoot, B, getting to the net, and C, getting the puck through when people are there. Sean, we saw, and Jeff, you know this. Last year, the Jets, sometimes when they went to the blue paint, the shots weren't getting through, or when the shots were getting through, they were on their way to the blue paint. So I think there's, some of it is ability to drag the line a little bit better, but it's a lot of, the Jets are a great rush team. Nate Schmidt was talking about it in Detroit on Tuesday, I want to say. When you're allowed to get active, it's a nightmare for the defense, because you think you've got everybody covered, and oh, by the way, the second wave D-man is there, and either he's banging one home or he's finding someone for a backdoor tap. So I think the activation station is very important for sure. I think it suits the Jets' game because they have a lot of mobile players. I mean, we talked about Dylan DeMello the other day, Sean, but just briefly. I mean, DeMello's already got 14 points this year. I mean, this is a guy who's been pigeonholed as a defensive defenseman. He's making cross-ice, plays that are leading into grade A scoring chances right now. And there's just that confidence that all of them are showing. On the flip side of that, Dylan Samberg continues to play well. He made another, couple important blocks. But we use the word empower so much when it comes to bonus. I don't think anyone feels more empowered than the defense corps. I mean, Josh Morrissey at the top of that list. All players are feeling empowered, but the defensemen especially. I think they felt like an afterthought, to be quite frank. I think all we talked about is how great the Jets' top six was. That defense corps, it's kind of been a work in progress since Dustin Byfuglien left. And now these guys are kind of looking at this and saying, hey, don't forget about us over here. And the other part of that, too, is that anyone who's played any level of hockey, you can have the most skilled group available. If you don't have defensemen that can get the puck in their hands, going through the neutral zone with speed, you're never going to score off the rush. So I think there's a confidence that's being shown by the group as a whole. And, the forwards are flourishing, and the defensemen are doing more, like way more than just their part of the scenario. They're taking care of business as well. And it's been an important weapon for them because teams can't just say, throw a blanket around the top six forwards and the Jets are finished.
Exactly.
It's diversified their offense, essentially.
Here's what I think is absolutely crazy. The Jets, like I said this, and I'll stand to this. I think if you watch Jets games and you see if they come out and they're not generating a lot, Paul Maurice fought for 2 years to try and get this team to go to the net, right? And with the Jets, Rick Bowness is able to in-game be like, okay, guys, that's enough. Get to the front of the net. And then you'll see it. It's just getting the puck back to the point and firing it on net. The crazy part about this, you guys, is the Jets are third in the NHL in shooting percentage. So the crazy part about that is the teams that usually do that, the teams that usually score like that, are teams that get the puck to the front of the net and jam it in, right? Well, the Jets are getting it done a different way. They are scoring from distance, and yet their accuracy or their ability to score more often on the shots they take is third in the league right now. And it's the chaos. To me, that's what it is. It's entirely the chaos that is being created. This doesn't work. These goals aren't going in if Pierre-Luc Dubois isn't doing what he's been doing, if Blake Wheeler's not doing what he's been doing, if Adam Lowry hasn't been doing what he's doing. The Jets, it was talked about on our broadcast, down the middle, Scheifele included. Scheifele's been another guy who's been great at going to the net. Like, you've got this size advantage compared to most teams. It's still that thing, guys, where we go on the road and we go talk to the teams in the other dressing room, and you realize the Jets are still a pretty big team. There's some hulks on the Jets team compared to other teams, right? Like, you go in and you go and check out the Pittsburgh Penguins, and Jason Zucker is not that tall of a guy. Sidney Crosby is not that tall of a guy. Jake Gensel isn't that tall of a guy. And then you go in the Jets room, and the four guys that I just mentioned, they're huge guys, and they're going to the front of the net now, and they're creating that chaos. I wanted to touch on this because people keep bringing them up, because I think right now everyone's looking and thinking, okay, the Jets are, are they the best team in the league right now? Are they one of the best teams in the league right now? And one of the names that keeps coming up over and over again is the Seattle Kraken. And this is interesting. I wanted to bring this up to you guys because we had some conversations, the Hockey Night in Canada team yesterday, with the Sens coaches and the Colorado coaches, and the team that they talked about a lot was the Seattle Kraken. So people are asking if they're for real. The coaches think they're for real, and they'll say what it is that makes them so good is they're just like warriors going to the front of the net, and they've got big defensemen who can bomb the puck from the back end. That's one of the things, Ken, I remember you and I having this conversation. Seattle, they came with a built-in great decor, right? And guys who can shoot shots from the point, but they said none of that works without getting to the front of the net and crashing the front of the net. And I can tell you right now, both those teams, Ottawa and the Colorado Avalanche too, are a team that are trying to be more like that. But when those guys were talking, everything they were saying about Seattle, you can say the exact same thing about the Winnipeg Jets. Those two teams have a very similar style right now, and they're having success for the most part, not because they're so skilled, but because they've got a game plan where they're out hustling, outworking everybody, and they're just taking the front of the net and getting the puck into the back of the net from there, whether or not it's from shots from the back end that they're creating that chaos, or capitalizing on the tip-ins like we saw tonight, or capitalizing on rebounds like Blake Wheeler seems to get all his goals this year. Those two teams right now have the best structure in the West. It makes me think, guys, that year that the Jets went to the conference final in 2018, everyone was so zeroed in and focused on the Nashville Predators that no one really saw Vegas coming. But if you remember that year, Vegas's regular season games with the Jets were wars. They were really, really good games. People should have seen them coming. I said this earlier on this show. I said it, I think it was around November, and they promptly went on a little bit of a losing skid and made me look bad there for a little bit. But I said a long time ago in November, I was convinced after the second game that the Seattle Kraken played the Winnipeg Jets. They're for real. That team is for real. If you see them, it's like looking in a mirror. They're not as skilled. So I think I give the Jets a little bit of a little bit of an edge because of that. But don't sleep on that team. People who are asking if they were for real, I think they are entirely for real. And boy, if the Jets met them in the playoffs, I still think that they would beat them. But that could be a real war, because that's two styles. It's a little bit of looking at each other in the mirror. I don't know, Ken. What have you seen from Seattle in the highlights you've been watching from them, but also from the time that they played the Jets?
haven't seen them during this hot streak, so I can't really weigh in. What I know is, they've got 4 lines that contribute. Daniel Sprong has been an incredibly high-value player, as our colleague Jeff Merrick likes to talk a lot about. Eli Tolvanen, ridiculous shooting percentage right now, but he's got 5 goals already since the waiver claim. If I'm Seattle, the only concern I would have, and this is no knock on Martin Jones, he's done an excellent job, but he's basically just over 900 save percentage. I mean, if it's Martin Jones versus Connor Hellebuck in a conference finals scenario, most people are going with Connor Hellebuck, but Hellebuck has to win that head-to-head. I mean, it's easy to say that, but I think their team is sound defensively. They brought in some important offense in the offseason, Bjorkstrand and Burakovsky especially. They've been excellent in those roles. Yanni Gourde is healthy. He is a checking line beast, as Sean, you saw firsthand with Tampa in those years. They're a good team. I think it'd be a fun series. Anybody who plays, nobody's going to enjoy playing the Seattle Kraken, I don't think. And from talking about our colleagues, I mean, Bo Horvat's a guy that could be on the radar for either the Boston Bruins or the Seattle Kraken, depending on what Ron Francis wants to do. And it's interesting to me because everyone talks about Vegas doing it in the first year. I mean, now Seattle, all of a sudden, you have a chance to go for it. We talked about things, if the West is wide open, I mean, man, you're going to be tempted to go for it if you're Seattle. And one quick thing for the chat roomers, folks, it's not a conspiracy against the Jets. The reason the Jets are listed behind the Toronto Maple Leafs, they're even in points. The Jets have more wins, yes, but they don't have more regulation wins. The Jets' dominance in overtime is the reason they are listed behind. But who cares? They're tied for 4th. It doesn't matter. It's not someone saying the Jets aren't good enough. That's the reason why they are listed after the Leafs. It's 23-22 in regulation wins. But anyways, the debate about the best team in Canada now, that would be fun, but it's a little bit late for that. We got to go to Dubois here. We got we're going to go overtime because Jeff's here. I'm going to say right now,
Kenny, there's one thing I wanted to not fact check Sean, but who didn't see Vegas coming that year? What are you talking about? I mean, I thought that was I think
their year was pretty special. I mean, they started the crazy start.
And 24, they had twice as many wins as they had losses, and I think the surprise was them.
I would say it like this: who in Winnipeg, and I would include every member of the Winnipeg Jets at that time, didn't think that they were going to handle the Vegas Golden Knights easier than they handled the Nashville Predators? Because I can tell you, being in that room, that's what I felt from that team. I could tell in being in that building in Winnipeg when they opened that series with the quick 4 goals in the first 10 minutes and the way people were taunting Marc-Andre Fleury after he let in a bad goal. I think the celebration was on in this city, and I don't think anyone took them seriously. I'm not saying that, they clearly had a good regular season, but anyone out there, I never came across one person in the city of Winnipeg who gave the Vegas Golden Knights a chance to knock off the Winnipeg Jets that year. That's what I mean by that.
You gave nobody clarify.
I don't remember you saying it.
Winnipeg gave Vegas a shot.
I don't remember you saying it. I don't remember Kenny saying it. I don't remember.
I respected Vegas, man.
I respected them, but I don't remember anyone saying, I don't know, guys, I think the Jets may be in trouble in this series. I think everyone, even 3 or 4 games into that series, everyone was just like, yeah, the Jets fell a little bit. They're going to turn around. They're going to wake up. That's all I heard. I never heard one person say, listen, everyone just take a step back and stop planning the parade. Like, there were people after they knocked off the Nashville Predators, I remember on Twitter saying, we're going to win the Stanley Cup. Like, nobody. And I will stand by that. Someone find me the receipt. Someone find me the receipt from someone in Winnipeg who actually thought that the Jets weren't going to win that series.
On Twitter, people are announcing Jets going to win the Cup after those wins too, man. Like, I'd like to introduce you to
where's your evidence, Jeff? That you said
Google it. Go Google Jets Stanley Cup and see how it comes
the Jets beat the President's Trophy winner. They had to feel good about themselves, yes, but I don't think they went in thinking. I mean, if we want to talk about recent history, Sean, I mean, the Jets would have respected the Vegas Golden Knights a lot more than they respected Montreal.
PLD, we need to get on the PLD. I just want
man, and I mean,
check a little bit.
Sorry, I like it's good. Good receipt check by both parties. One quick thing here, folks, and for all the conspiracy theorists, where is Rob? Where's this quote from Robbie
I
here?
say hang on to those conspiracy theories. Jump on the fact that what are the Leafs doing? Let's lean into that. What do you mean the Leafs are better than the Jets? They have the same amount of points, Kenny. What are you talking about? Regulation wins? Did you count them all up? I don't.
Yeah,
buy
exactly.
It's TSN.
Here, hang on. Rob Mahoney.
It's TSN
Exactly.
that's forcing them above the Jets. Come on, all they care about is Toronto.
Quick one for Rob. The foundation that Pierre-Luc Dubois is taking over is Vinny Lecavalier's foundation. I would like to ask Rob Mahoney, how many games did Vinny Lecavalier play for the Montreal Canadiens? I'm pretty sure it was 0. So because he's taking over the foundation, there's no correlation to what Pierre-Luc Dubois may do in his future. That's my take on that. Dubois you don't agree?
I'll just tell you this. We all know behind the scenes how hard the Montreal Canadiens tried to get Vinny Lecavalier back to Montreal.
Totally.
But did they?
I was almost
did they?
He did. I was almost convinced he did.
Oh,
I can tell you
they're going to try to get Dubois too. That doesn't mean they're getting him, and this certainly doesn't mean they'll get him.
There was a trade worked out for Vinny Lecavalier to the Montreal Canadiens that got kiboshed by the Tampa Bay Lightning owner. I talked at the time with the people involved, or I talked with the people involved in it at the time. That deal was done and delivered, and it got kiboshed by the owner at that time.
I think the question is, how many games did Vinny Lecavalier want to play?
Oh, well, that's fair. Okay, that's a different story. Anyways, so I just wrote
I'm just saying that Vinny Lecavalier.
I'm not saying he will never play a game there. What I'm just saying is
Jonathan Toews played for the Jets. He's got a whole bunch of things going on in Winnipeg. You know what I mean? You can get back. You want to get back to your own community. So I'm with you, Kenny. I'm going to get off this conspiracy theory. It felt really. It almost felt too good.
Now, again, I'm going to say I enjoy, we had a good time on this last road trip, Sean and myself. I mean, we didn't really get out at all because it was too busy, but I'm going to miss this trip with Hammer. You're going to be in a place where, and I wrote a little bit about it in my column here today. I mean, Pierre-Luc Dubois is about to go under the heat lamp in both official languages on Tuesday. The people of Montreal don't care that Dubois said, I'm only going to, talk about my future at the end of the season. That doesn't matter to them. It's going to be a full-on verbal assault on Tuesday when it comes to the scrums, and
I'll be in there.
Exactly, and like I said, I think, and for Pierre-Luc Dubois, how could it be? My lead basically is saying it couldn't be any of a grander entrance for Dubois, at least as a member of the visiting team. I mean, he's rolling into town with 20 goals, 49 points in 44 games. He is the object of the affection of the community of Montreal, the province of Quebec, probably the entire franchise when it comes to the off season. But the beauty of Dubois is that he doesn't care about any of that. So all he cares about is having a great year, but he's not going to hide from it either. He's not going to go out and say, but this is the beauty. Like, every single person is going to be looking for some morsel that they're going to interpret as, of course he wants to play with the Canadiens next time. He said this, or he didn't say that. So I think it'll be a fascinating exchange. I wish I was standing beside you. I wish I was standing beside you.
Though, like, Pierre-Luc Dubois will play ball.
Totally.
He's not the kind of guy that's just going to be like, oh, I'm not talking about that or whatever. Of course he's going to say that at the beginning because there's going to be people who honor it. I mean, people at home in Winnipeg, we don't need to ask him every 2 weeks. The guy's under contract for the Jets. He's lighting it up. But, yeah, as soon as you go to Montreal, I mean, everyone's trying to find a story. Well, one's just walking right through the door the day after he takes over a foundation in the city. So
this is what we consider a layup, Hammy, right? This is a layup.
Beautiful. These are awesome. This is like, the stories write themselves, and it's just, and he'll answer it and do whatever. But I do think his future is a very, very interesting.
For sure.
Very, very interesting thing.
Guys, I want to add a little something in here because it's been called for in the chat room.
Let's go.
And even in the private chat, Jeff sent me an email saying, enough's enough, get the headband out. And Scott Hayward says, where's the headband, Renny? Jets are best in the West, seems super called for. I agree. Let's make this Sean's headband version of the Kenny and Renny show. Let's just do this, guys. Gut feeling, Ken, is Pierre-Luc Dubois going to be in Winnipeg long term?
Oh, I mean, I said he was.
gut feeling.
I said last year that he was. I mean, I still. Yeah. I know that things didn't turn very well for me with what transpired in the summertime.
Big things, yeah.
Yeah, Bartley Kivas, shout out to you on that one, to our friend. But I will say this: he's still a member of the Jets, so it is still a possibility.
Hold on. I
didn't answer the question yet. You're aware? Yes, I still didn't say yes, but I think there is a better chance today than there was last season. I think that he loves playing for Rick Bowness. I think he loves playing on a line with Kyle Connor. But again, I don't know what his personal situation is or what he wants long term. I think there's a better chance, but I mean, I think, let's put it this way. I think there's still time to convince Pierre-Luc Dubois that he can be a long-term member of the Winnipeg Jets, and how the Jets perform down the stretch and into the playoffs is going to impact his decision ultimately.
Kenny, that was the smallest dipping the toe in answer you could have possibly.
Well, I've already cannonballed. I already said he was.
You threw a wake up like 15 minutes into the show. What do you want? What do
buddy,
you want? What do
I
want?
I already said he's going to sign the biggest contract in franchise history. I am not walking that back until he's gone. Okay. Yes, Dubois will stay, and I could be wrong on this, of course. But until he's been traded, he's going to sign the biggest deal in franchise history. Yes.
Okay, there you go.
There you go.
You saying
I'm leaving that receipt on
this year than last year in a year where the Jets and
fine. He's going to sign the biggest deal of all time.
There was that hard.
I could be wrong, and you know what? If I'm wrong, I'm okay with it.
Jeff, you go. What do you think's happening?
Okay, I'm gonna have to. So diehard Jets fans who don't like bad news. This is your early warning to mute the mic or turn it down a little bit. Look, I absolutely love Pierre-Luc Dubois' game. You know, I thought last year he was a guy that I thought, gave a shit more nights than the average Jet did. Obviously had a bad tough first season when he got traded, and he's off to an unbelievable year. And I always felt the Jets were in a tough spot with a couple different guys. And one of those guys is Pierre-Luc Dubois. I mean, I don't think it's personal and I don't think it's whatever, but I don't think he's going to be in Winnipeg. And he's either going to get, because I don't think you let him walk, he's going to have to get traded or something's going to happen, because I just feel he's one of those guys that is going to want his top dollar, is going to want his worth. And if he starts doing everything that he wants and achieves and what his coach wants, and what we've seen from Rick Bowness is when Rick Bowness puts his support behind you, you often succeed. So if he's going to be a 200-foot player in the kind of points that he's destined to get right now, he's going to price himself out of Winnipeg. And I just think he's the kind of guy, and this is not a shot against him. This is the right of every single player in a business that is the NHL. He's going to look for other places to go for big money, and he's going to at least entertain it. He comes across to me as a guy, and I think a lot of guys are like that in this league, is that, when you saw Michael Frolik so many years ago, and it's weird I'm bringing his name up. Remember when he bashfully told us all in Scrubs, it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to test free agency and all that stuff?
It's
every single player says that. And if you're going to have the seasons that we're expecting and what Pierre-Luc Dubois is having this year, I always thought it was a lose-lose situation for Winnipeg, because if Pierre-Luc Dubois does not have this kind of season, he's gone 100%. Your best bet was for him to have the kind of season he's having and to fall in love with Winnipeg. He's just, to me, a guy who I think at his age, long-term, he's going to make a decision on his future. And I hate to be Mr. Negative, because I love his game, and I think he'd be a huge player. He could be a captain for the Winnipeg Jets, and he might even sign the biggest contract in history. But he's gone, man. I think he's gone.
I'm on board with Hammy. I think it's really tough to keep him for exactly what you're talking about.
Everyone's gonna want him, man. He's the new era power forward. He is going to be sought after.
So someone can make
Jets are the only team that can give him the 8th year, though.
Well, and that's
how much does the 8th year count for a guy like him?
Jets are going to have to dig into dig into their pockets way deeper than they ever have, and we know this team isn't going to do that because they got another guy. They'd have to pick Pierre-Luc Dubois and then throw massive money at him, and they'd have to. It's one of those things that's going to be sad for the Jets to say goodbye, but he's going to be sought after and going to be too expensive.
I think both of you are hitting the mark. Like, he's going to get paid. He's going to get paid a ridiculous amount. He keeps scoring the way that he's scoring. I mean, you've got everything from him, right? Like, the guy leads the NHL in penalties drawn, so he gives you all these opportunities to score on the power play. Looks like he's going to head over 30 goals. He's on pace to go over 90 points. I mean, we were blown away last season when Kyle Connor got 90 points. If he goes and does that, I mean, what is there left for a player to do? Like, I mean, this is what I'm talking about. Like, I keep seeing people right in the chat room. Yes, sign him for $8 million a year right now. It's like, why would he sign for $8 million at this stage? Like, why would you take a contract for less than Blake Wheeler when you're on the potential to have a season like Blake Wheeler's maybe never had before? I mean, all things equal, Blake had a 91-point season. If he ends up around there, he's got a 91-point season, but he also draws all these penalties and creates all this havoc and pisses the other team off and takes them off their game. Like, he is such a 3D player, such a multi-dimensional player. There is not a team in the league that wouldn't look at that and want that. Like, he's one of those guys, I think, that may get paid quite a bit more than what he's worth. Like, everyone here is looking at his numbers and saying, well, we should pay him this. And, you know, everyone in Winnipeg is looking, when you put these prices out, what you're doing is you're doing the hometown bargain, right? Like, that's what you're trying to negotiate. You're trying to negotiate a low number, so then they can turn around and sign Hellebuck as well, and then they can sign Scheifele, and then it all comes together so easily, and everyone's happy, and it all works out the way that you want it to. That's not typically the way it works out. And I think for the most part, Pierre-Luc Dubois, I think, has kind of everything that he's done. And I'll say this we saw this with Patrick Laine. You saw towards the end that the moves that Patrick Laine was making, and it was the same thing with Jacob Trouba. Every move those guys made was a move to get themselves out of town as quick as possible. Every contract they negotiated, every time they went to an arbitrator, those guys.
Not with Laine. Laine wanted to sign long-term.
Right, but when he didn't want to anymore, when he wanted to stay, he started making the decisions, and he wouldn't lock down long-term. And so what we've seen from Pierre-Luc Dubois is the exact same playbook as Jacob Trouba up to this point. Now, the hope, and this is the hope, and it's the hope that everyone has, and it's what you touched on, Ken. The hope is he takes a look at what's happening this year and thinks, maybe I'm part of something special here. Maybe my hockey career alongside Kyle Connor is something worth sticking around for. Like, it would have to change for that reason. But I think coming into this season, every move that he was making was the move of a guy who is getting himself to unrestricted free agency as fast as he possibly could. And that tells you something. In my mind, that tells you something. Listen, there was a time this show didn't exist then, but people were saying the same thing about Jacob Trouba. Oh no, people say he wants out, blah, blah, this, blah, blah, that. Don't believe everything you hear. No, Jacob Trouba is going to be heading out of town regardless of what happened. I think it looks in that direction. That's what's going to happen with Pierre-Luc Dubois. Ken, maybe that money puts him over the top. I do think it's interesting. If I were Pierre-Luc Dubois, this is what I'd be asking myself. I know that I can play. I know I can piss people off. I know I can draw penalties. But am I ever going to score the way I'm scoring right now with Kyle Connor anywhere else? I mean, to me, I do think he's asking himself that question, and he should be asking himself that question because what they have together is something special. But he's going to have to get paid, which kind of gets to the last thing I wanted to talk about quickly here. With those three guys coming up, I want you to put the GM hat on. I want you to start, Jeff. Just prioritize for me. If you're Kevin Cheveldayoff and you are trying to pull off the miracle and lock down Connor Hellebuck again and Mark Scheifele and Pierre-Luc Dubois, who do you prioritize? Because prioritizing one player over another could very well mean that the player who's not being prioritized says, okay, that's enough for me. Like if Mark Scheifele hears that the Jets are all in on trying to sign Pierre-Luc Dubois and then they're going to get to him, then it's probably going to affect his decision whether or not he wants to go test the market as well. So how would you prioritize those 3 players?
How I would prioritize, I'll give you 2 lists. How I would prioritize and how I think the Jets are prioritizing them.
Yeah, sure. You do it, and then you
prioritize. I would take Hellebuck first all day long. You need to get him because like he's gonna have good years. You know what I mean? Like you need a goalie. You know, if you just it's the most important position. And again, prioritizing is based on subjective value on who you think brings the most to your team. I'd probably do Dubois second if I was prioritizing players, you know, like, and then Mark Scheifele third. It's not like Mark Scheifele's a distant third or last. Those guys everyone is extremely close because those are 3 important players. I think the Jets are going to prioritize Mark Scheifele first because I think that's the one. I think it's the guy who's most likely to re-sign with this team. I think what the sales pitch for Mark Scheifele is going to be is you were the first ever draft pick in Winnipeg. You want to be with one team. We're going to pay you. This is what you deserve. Blah blah blah. And and Mark Scheifele's a very good player. I mean, we're seeing Mark Scheifele I think Mark Scheifele will be the kind of guy who'll take into consideration Rick Bowness and what he does for his game more than the other guys perhaps. And so I think Mark Scheifele will be the priority. And then I think you have a tie for third, and I think Connor Hellebuck is in the same situation as Pierre-Luc Dubois. Like I think they are, like look at a guy like Connor Hellebuck, and like I said, I'd be prioritizing him number 1. But you have to be realistic. You can't prioritize a guy who you don't think is gonna sign with you because then you alienate another guy and whatever, right?
Yes, exactly.
So you need to put into the equation the likelihood of signing the guy and what that obviously whatever money plays into it. I just think Scheifele is the most likely to sign, and then I think you have guys like Pierre-Luc Dubois for the reasons I had mentioned why he might be gone, and then Connor Hellebuck who just had a young child, right? He's an American guy. He didn't love, I'm not thinking COVID or whatever, but Americans want to raise their families in America for the most part. And he comes across as one of those guys who I think is going to also be sought out, heavily sought after. And I think he's going to look at the next contract, much like Pierre-Luc Dubois, for a decision for his family. And this is just my guess. It could be absolutely nothing. And it's not that I'm choosing this or wanting this, but I think those guys are probably gone.
Ken?
Yeah, it doesn't matter the prioritizing. It only matters who wants to be here. I'm with Jeff on that one. The only issue, Connor Hellebuck's one of the best goalies in the world, if not the best. But at the end of an 8-year deal, Connor Hellebuck's 37 years old. Is Connor Hellebuck going to be an elite goalie until he's 37, considering he's playing 60 to 65 games a season? I'd be willing to bet on him being elite for a good chunk of that time. But who knows what Connor Hellebuck wants to do? Mark Scheifele having a career year, not in terms of overall points, but in terms of goals. If you're a general manager who's not thinking emotionally, you're thinking Pierre-Luc Dubois is a priority because he's 24 years old, right? On an 8-year deal, if you go 8 years, Pierre-Luc Dubois is 32 years old. Right now, Blake Wheeler's 36, and he has 1 more year left on his deal. The one thing we learned about Kevin Cheveldayoff that I was very surprised for a guy who keeps his cards very close to the vest, when he mentioned the words legacy contract last year, that was a bit of an eye-opener for me. So I'm not saying he wouldn't go 8 years on either Hellebuck or Scheifele, because I'm with you, Jeff. The thing the Jets must be thinking, with everything that's gone on this year in terms of the on-ice product, let's also not forget what happened with the statue of Dale Hawerchuk going up. There is an obvious connection with Dale Hawerchuk and Mark Scheifele, and version 2.0 would love to make up for what happened to 1.0. Dale Hawerchuk should have never left the Winnipeg Jets. That's a fact. He should not have been traded to the Buffalo Sabres. He should have been Steve Yzerman. He should have been Winnipeg's Steve Yzerman. I don't care about any of the ownership issues, arena issues. That guy should have played 20 years with the Jets. Those are the facts. He was a first overall pick. I understand things went sideways. The Jets 2.0 would probably love to, it's not right or wrong, but to ensure that Mark Scheifele, whose favorite player, by the way, was Steve Yzerman, would become a Steve Yzerman for Winnipeg. Is that a risk at all? I mean, there's a risk with every single contract.
That's the sales pitch.
That happens.
That's the sales pitch.
No, exactly. And I know you were going down that road. And here's the other part. I mean, people say it's a huge risk. Mark takes care of his body like very few people do. And that there's a lot of committed people in the NHL. Mark Scheifele's ability to play out an 8-year contract is probably pretty darn good.
Yeah.
So
great point.
I don't think there's as much. The only issue for the Jets is they don't know what the salary. If the salary cap's only going up by $1 million or $2 million, it becomes problematic to a degree. But at the same time, they can afford to pay. We talked about Boston, Blake, and the glass ceiling with Charlie McAvoy, and they're going to have to do it with David Pastrnak. Jets are going to have to do it here with whichever two of those three they can try to sign. They're going to do everything in their power to do that. And I mean, I think it'll be interesting to see. And the thing to me, Sean and Jeff, you saw this too, at the Howard Chuck ceremony, it meant something to Mark.
It did.
And to see how people talk about Dale still so many years down the road. And that's after Dale left, they still talk about him with such high regard. Mark was on the bench when Dale would roll into town and he would drop the puck and the crowd would go bananas thinking about in the 1980s and early 90s, right? So, I mean, that matters, but at the end of the day, these players all have their own priorities. They're going to do what they want to do, and I don't, again, I love the question. It's worth talking about, but I have no idea what the players in there, where would the players prioritize Winnipeg? I have no idea, and that's really all that matters in this scenario. And I would also just counter quickly, we know that hockey is a game of feelings, but Dustin Byfuglien didn't turn down the money even though it was offered to Andrew Ladd first. And it's a very similar situation. So I don't think it's automatically my feelings are hurt. Especially my feelings wouldn't be hurt if I was offered 8x10 for $80 million. I don't care if you offered it to somebody else first. If you're still offering it to me, I'm probably going to sign it.
Not sure that Dustin Byfuglien was sure, and I know that the Jets did not want Dustin Byfuglien to
he knew, buddy. He knew.
Okay, so he knew, but the Jets, to the point of what kind of thoughts they're having in these situations, the Jets didn't want him to know that they were negotiating first with Andrew Ladd. They wanted to keep that close to the vest as they did with everything else. So that's clearly a concern. Here's something that I think is problematic.
Sorry, one other quick one. Buff would have made more money if he had gone to free agency. He signed a lucrative deal, but he would have been north of 7 if he had gone. If it had really bothered his feelings, he would have made more money.
Guy likes ice fishing. Where is he going to have a lifestyle that fit his lifestyle better than Winnipeg? I mean, this is where he wanted to be. Like that one's a little bit different because of that. Like
for sure.
A guy who wants to live, on Huntington Beach, that he's going to go play for the Anaheim Ducks. That's Buff's Huntington Beach, the Red River and a pail and a toque. That was his Huntington Beach. That's what he wanted to do. So it made sense for him to do that there. Here's one thing I think that we haven't really talked about in this that you have to factor in. One of the reasons that the Jets have stacked as much talent on this roster as they have is because, and we've talked about it before, the value contracts that they have here. Mark Scheifele makes probably 30% less than he probably could on the market. Connor Hellebuyck is in a situation, he's making like 40% less than you'd think a guy like that would be making out on the market. Kyle Connor is a guy who probably, the way he's playing right now, should be a $9 million player. Time and time again, the Jets do a really, really good job of getting guys locked down to contracts. And one of the things that I think that Kevin Cheveldayoff does really well, this doesn't include Mark Scheifele, because the Mark Scheifele contract was just, I think what they did was they took a young player who was still kind of blown away that he was where he was. They caught him on the way up on a really, really long deal. I can tell you right now, having talked to agents, they were blown away at how many UFA years Mark Scheifele sold on that deal, and that's really what they talk about, like the years that. To Jeff's point, it's a player's dream to get to unrestricted free agency, and it makes sense. All of you at home, think about being in your workplace and then all of a sudden having every other business in town that does something like that suddenly bid on your services. No, we'll pay you more. How good would that feel? How awesome would it be to go out and find out that 32 teams in the NHL want a piece of you, and the offers just keep getting better and better and better? So that makes sense. But the trick here with Pierre-Luc Dubois, who's had his I tried to negotiate the triumvirate, equal offers to all three. Just tell us your numbers, fellas, like Taves and Kane. Okay, that's an interesting one. Here's where it gets tricky. Anyone who's thinking about hometown deals being taken or all those kind of things, or the David Pastrnak route or all that kind of stuff, the Jets have already depressed the amount of money that these guys have made in their career by a significant degree. I think, this is my take on this, Connor Hellebuyck, Mark Scheifele, and Pierre-Luc Dubois are not necessarily going to be in a position to turn down money to stay in Winnipeg because they've already turned down a lot of money to stay in Winnipeg with the deals that they've had here. Now, is it the Jets' fault that Mark Scheifele signed on to that deal? No, but we all know that Mark Scheifele knows that he's been underpaid for a long time, and we've heard rumblings that he's not that happy about it. Clearly, he's not happy about it. He changed his agent because of it. There's no way Connor Hellebuyck shouldn't be one of the highest paid goaltenders in the league. His number should start at 9, and he has to go get that money. He has to go try and get that in his next contract because he's been losing $3 or $4 million a year with the deal that he signed in Winnipeg. Mark Scheifele has been losing at least $2 a year every year that he's been here. That's a lot of money that these guys have lost out of their pockets. And Pierre-Luc Dubois would like, if he would have gone down the road of a player and got a deal that Calgary had given to Tkachuk or something like that, he could have started making that big money years ago, but he's not. He hasn't made a lot. It's the same thing as Andrew Kopp. The Jets depressed the amount of money that Andrew Kopp made for a number of years, and then when it was time for him to get paid, he went out and he got paid. Brandon Tanev did the same thing. Brandon Tanev, the moment he could get paid more than what he was getting paid here, he went and he took that. And I think that has to be part of this conversation going forward, is the Jets have had Connor Hellebuyck on a song, Mark Scheifele on a song, and to a degree, Pierre-Luc Dubois on a song. So these guys are going to want to get paid because they've been getting underpaid for a long time right now, and you have to factor that in. I'll just get into it quickly. I think it's got to be Connor Hellebuyck first because I think we've just seen too much for too many years of how valuable he is and how he can keep teams going. And if you do lose a number of those players, I think you can actually keep the Jets alive, competitive, and a good team with the likes of Nick Ehlers and Kyle Connor and whoever is left behind when the Rutger McGroartys come in and the Chad Luciuses. If you've got Connor Hellebuyck backstopping you, that's something that can allow you to survive and make playoffs and make runs that maybe you wouldn't have made without another goaltender. The thing that fascinates me is the Mark Scheifele thing. I think you're right. There's a legacy thing here. The Jets love the idea that they went out and their very first move was drafting Mark Scheifele, what he's turned into. It's a perfect story. It's a Hollywood story. That does not happen. You don't go out and get it right on your very first pick and get a guy who, if he does stay for the duration of his career in Winnipeg, is going to be the all-time leader in points and assists and goals. He'll pass Wheeler, and he'll do it in the next couple of years or 4 years or something like that if he does stick around. So that part kind of fascinates me a little bit here. Kenny, I think you're entirely right with the young man that you have in Pierre-Luc Dubois and what he's capable of. You'd think that you would go for that because if you could get that guy locked down for 8 years, then you've got that element for that long of a time. But I don't know. It's going to be a tough one for Kevin Cheveldayoff. It's going to be, J.M. Sue. Helly loves fishing too. Don't forget that. Sure, but I'll say this. Dustin Byfuglien stuck around this area and fished in this area in the summertime. Connor Hellebuyck doesn't. He gets out of here and he goes fishing in the States, and he doesn't necessarily fish for walleye and I think he's a bass fisherman for the most part. Had a conversation with them. Anyway, I think it's tricky. I think the elements of this that are so tricky are the idea that these guys do need to go out and get paid. But I think that the Scheifele thing, I do think, Ken, if I was Mark Scheifele and I found out that Connor Hellebuck was being negotiated with, and if I felt like I was number 3 on that list, I think I'd be hurt, and I think I'd be in a situation where I'd be like, okay, let's see what the rest of the league thinks about me, because I came in here, I gave them a value contract, I've given nothing but my full effort. I've brought other guys on this team along. I've really been a huge part of building this franchise. If it's not felt that he's prioritized for having done that, I think it could push him in a direction where he would want to look elsewhere.
Yeah, but none of us three said he was not going to be prioritized, right?
I never said you would. I'm
sorry. Okay.
My opinion. Am I not allowed to give an opinion?
Of course you are. I'm sorry. Kidding. So you're saying he's number 3?
We just heard a lot of them, Sean. Go ahead, Kenny.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is this is going to be a really, really tough negotiation. Like everyone else is sitting around here and thinking, when other teams' players come up, they sit down. I think it's very business-like. I think there's a lot of emotions involved in this, because we do know that Mark Scheifele has been underpaid and he's bothered by it. So there's going to be emotion in here. There's going to be a degree of, we know that Blake Wheeler felt this way, and we know that Blake Wheeler wanted to come into his next contract and get paid back some of the money that he felt that he was owed for what he'd done at the value that he'd done it at. And the Jets did that for him. They gave that to him based on that. They did the same thing with Brian Little. Like the contract that they gave him was more based on what he'd done for the team before that than what they expected him to do going forward. So if you're Mark Scheifele, and this is what's been established, stars that have given their all and not maybe got paid as much as they should have, get paid in the future by the Winnipeg Jets. If there's a feeling that he's not going to get paid like that because they need to fit everyone else in there, I just think there's an element of, well, if Blake got it, if Brian Little got it, if Dustin Byfuglien got it, why am I not getting it? I think I think there's a lot of emotion that's going to be involved with this, and I think the most emotion laden will be the Mark Scheifele negotiation. Guys, do we want to go anywhere else, or do we want to shut this down?
We're gonna. It's been a good day. Sammy, you got anything else?
I just say one more thing. I think that it's. I think the good news is, I think you're right. I mean, I don't think you're saying anything that's wild. Like, of course Mark Scheifele thinks he's underpaid. Of course Connor Hellebuck thinks they're underpaid. And if they don't think they're underpaid, their agents are telling them they're underpaid. So, that, I don't think, they're not going, of course they are underpaid. And of course they're going to want that money back. And that's been the difficulty in all of this, signing the big money, because not only do they want big money, they want to recuperate money. And the Jets have a philosophy of not paying money. And Mark Scheifele's, I see a lot of people being like, okay, a lot of people have signed big long-term contracts. Yeah, Mark Scheifele signing that darling deal for the Jets set the bar for Winnipeg. When they negotiated a contract with Connor Hellebuck, what did they say? Mark Scheifele gets paid this, in and around marquee player. When they signed Kyle Connor, who had, 2 30-goal seasons playing on that line, benefiting from that player, they said Mark Scheifele gets paid $6 million. We'll pay you $7 million. You're getting paid more than Mark Scheifele. That's where the ego gets into it. Now all those guys are going to want their money back. There's absolutely no doubt about it. But the good news in all of this is, if you can get a guy like Connor Hellebuck back, and you can convince him to play, or just get a good goalie in net, I think Rick Bowness is doing something really good with this team, where the players that will be around years later, this might open some real opportunities for the Jets to reevaluate who they want their leadership core to be. And I'm not saying that's an ideal situation or whatever, but I think Rick Bowness has an ability to bring in players and bring the best out of them. So if these guys don't want, I don't think that recipe for success is paying guys big money. What team, there's a lot of teams out there that get cash strapped because they have to give these big pay raises for a long time. So if you can keep one of those guys, maybe 2, that's obviously an incredible situation. If you can keep 2, you're going to be in salary cap hell. But the reality is, I think you have a good coaching staff in place that you might, I think the Jets are in a way better position now than we would have thought if we were having this conversation a year ago, and where this team might be. I think that Rick Bowness is capable of bringing in good players. He has the reputation to bring in guys, and I'd be curious to see what Rick Bowness how he would prioritize those 3 guys as he continues to put his systems into this team.
Sorry, one more, and then we're going to close it. But I mean, Jeff, I know it's apples and oranges, but don't you see some similarities with the Mike O'Shea effect and with what Rick Bowness is doing?
And I think you're seeing, and I think what you're these guys, I've said, how many times have I said this to you guys behind the scenes? The Winnipeg Jets needed a big hug. They needed someone to come in and hug them and tell them they were good and everything's going to be okay, and then show them what to do to be successful. And so I think the Jets, like, I mean, we're talking about if they're for real, we're talking about them leading the West, we're talking about them leading the Central. This is a good team. We just realized this has always been a good team. They just needed they needed a kick in the ass and a hug, because the reality is they're coaching each other now. The comments they say about each other, they're genuine. There's a culture finally put in place that is exactly what you need. It's the same thing that's going on in Seattle. You're buying into a system, the system works, and you're getting that kind of element of coaching that I don't think these players have ever seen. And that's the crazy part, because a lot of these players we talk about have never seen anything different in their careers. It was a young team when Paul Maurice took over, and they don't know any better. They can't compare their junior coaches to what they were getting. They thought this was the big league. This is a refreshed team. This is a coach who knows exactly what he's doing. It's a trust back and forth. And to your point, Kenny, about Mike O'Shea, it's absolutely that. This team wants to play for their coach. They don't want to disappoint their coach. And not only do they have that feeling, they also know what to do to be successful. And that's what we're seeing here. And it's finally what, and all those people who were talking about, Paul Maurice and how, bad of a coach he was and whatever. I mean, you got to start looking at those people and being like, they were right. Like Paul Maurice was a good person. He was a good quote, all those things clearly. And maybe in a lot of ways, he's a good coach. But he wasn't the right coach for these players, and we're seeing a coach that's come in, and that, I think, the bonus effect, as we talk about it throughout, essentially since he arrived here, it will be amazing to see what the bonus effect is in 1 or 2 years when this team starts making decisions and where this team's at in a year from now.
One thing I think that we have to throw into this here that makes things tricky is the thing about you'd said, Jeff, that they're going to have to move Pierre-Luc Dubois if they can't get something done. I've said this before.
You think they'll go to the end?
I think they'll go to the end, and here's why. It gets tricky to trade Pierre-Luc Dubois because I think a lot of the teams out there know that the Montreal Canadiens are waiting in the wings, right? And that this could just be a situation where he waits out his contract and any team will only have one more year of team control over him next year before he can walk to free agency and walk straight to Montreal if that's what he wants to do. That depresses his value on the trade market. And so I think the one thing that we saw, because this is funny, there's a lot of people who were like giving, Kevin Cheveldayoff like the credit this year for like keeping this team together. Probably, I guess I would bet a lot of the people who are doing that are the people who were screaming to have this thing stripped down and sold as parts in the summertime. But we know that Kevin Cheveldayoff tried to go out and move some of these players. Blake Wheeler admitted that there were conversations about trying to move him, but in the end what happened was those players didn't move because Kevin Cheveldayoff said what I wanted for that player and the value that I thought I needed from that player, I did not see it, so I held on to it. He held firm because he didn't get the offers back that he thought would have been fair for those things. So he's not going to move Pierre-Luc Dubois for whatever he can get. He's going to move him for what he thinks is fair for that. I think it may be hard to get that in a trade because Montreal is looming in the wings. And because of that, I think, and I made this before Christmas, I think the Jets are in a situation where they may just look at everything. And even if it came down to the idea that maybe Connor Hellebuyck is going to pursue unrestricted free agency and we may lose him, and maybe Mark Scheifele will too, and maybe Pierre-Luc Dubois will too. Well, if you're doing what you're doing this year, would you for a second ever consider moving Connor Hellebuyck in the middle of what's happening right now, or Pierre-Luc Dubois at this point? I mean, if there's a real feeling that some of these guys aren't going to stay and you need to capitalize on their value, then this year would make sense just as much as next year would make sense, right? And so I think that the Jets are going to get into a situation where they're going to get those players and probably use them as their own rentals and go in and try and take one more big swing. I mean, obviously, whatever happens this year is going to play a big factor on this, but we're expecting a long spring covering the Winnipeg Jets and expecting them to do special things. And I just don't see them doing special things this spring and then going into the offseason and stripping it down unless there's like a deal that just blows their socks off. Because of the Montreal waiting in the wings, I don't see that happening with Pierre-Luc Dubois. Couple quick things, guys. Someone asked for Montreal restaurant recommendations. I'll say this: go to Olive and Gourmando, get their Cuban sandwich. Absolutely, just lights out. It's pricey, but it's worth it. Hammy, where should they go?
So that's in Old Montreal, and I'll keep it in that area. And it's also expensive too. It's a steakhouse, but if you want to go to Gibby's. Gibby's is a great one. Méchant Boeuf is another more affordable place in Old Montreal. I got a list.
Yeah. Okay. And hey,
we had a tremendous meal at Grinder, Sean, with our pal Eric Engels.
Oh yeah.
In the summertime.
You had
a salad and I had a tomahawk with 3 people. With 4 people, it was tremendous. Yes.
That was funny. That was good. Okay. And what I almost forgot to do was hand
home
out
field, buddy. Home field.
Waiters 27, you won the home field award. It says almost 400 in here. After the Detroit game, there was like 200. Renny needs to call them out here after every game. Waiters is 100% right. I gotta say this, Kenny and Renny folks, don't be soft. Don't be running and hiding from this show when the Jets lose a game. You got to be here for the good times. You got to be here for the bad times. So if you want to come here and celebrate the victories, be here to console your fellow chat roomers when the Jets lay an egg on the occasional night that they've been doing it this year. Don't be a sore loser. Get to Kenny and Renny no matter what happens in the game. Thanks, everyone. We appreciate you coming along. Hammy, you rocked it as you always did. You got to get here more often. I think you're going to be on the road more often, so we've got more excuses to bring you in.
I'm on this 5-gamer starting tomorrow.
Well, let's get you in there. Kenny, you rocked it as usual. We know the chat room. You guys kicked butt as you always do. And I'll say this like I do at the end of every show. If you appreciate the conversations that are happening in these spaces with shows like ours, the Illegal Curve Hockey Show and Winnipeg Sports Talk, please appreciate the sponsors that are working hard to keep these conversations going in these spaces. For us, that's Vittorio Rossi, the Johnston Group, Trans-Canada Brewing Company, Lou Ferlin, and Home Field. Thank you so much, everybody. We will talk to you after the next game as the Jets play the Montreal Canadiens. Bye-bye.